Let's do it. Look at this. I am surrounded by greatness. Am I the luckiest panel? I think this is the best panel, but I'm just going to say it. Anyway, I'm fired up because I have Kate Alavez from PromoShop, Ryan Moore from Allmade, Julie Johnson is back from Stanley Stella, and we have Will Cullich from Blue Ridge Graphics. So thank you all for being here. So exciting.
Thanks,
Thank
Jay.
you.
Good stuff, right? So far, so good? All right,
Yes,
fired
sir.
up. All right, we have 4 panelists here. I'm going to go down the roll this way. Let's go Kate, Ryan, Will, Julie, if that's okay. When do you think sustainability, and maybe this has already happened, but when do you think sustainability is shifting from just kind of a nice to have to an actual real growth driver? You know, what's that moment, or can you think about something from where it went from a nice to have, we checked the box, to now it's a real growth driver? Kate Alves, have you got something there? Start us off.
Yes, yes. So I think for me, what I'm seeing is a strategic shift in not only our industry, but in consumer values over time. And so as larger brands and enterprise brands are looking toward the future and the long tail of how they are building businesses that are going to be sustainable in terms of profit, community involvement, and connected growth, wherever they might be, whatever industry. I do think that that shift over the past 5 to 7 years has been pretty palpable. And I think that is coming from a couple of different drivers. One, I think it's coming from what we've been talking about today, transparency. With the amount of information we have, there are so many questions we can ask. There are so many areas where we can find the resources that we need to identify who are the best in class partners, right? And our enterprise clients, all of our clients are asking us those questions. But I think the other driving factor is that when we go to recruit, or when we are talking to new potential clients, buyers, or students, our youngest friends coming out of those high school and university pipelines, that is where they are also driving this movement forward, right? So as we grow our companies, we're getting asked on both sides, from the oncoming or the incoming recruits and potential future clients, as well as from our enterprise clients. What is happening here? How can you make sure your organization is building a model that is reflective of a sustainable future for everybody? And what are you doing to show me from a tactile standpoint that you've actually done the work to make sure that you're providing the best solutions possible that are the most responsible in that market?
Yeah, I love that you brought up the employee side. We often fail to, the recruiting. That's so smart. Often it escapes me, so I'm glad that you brought that up. What about you, Ryan? What are some of we shifted away from nice to have, and now maybe we have some real growth drivers. Have you seen any momentum that you want to highlight?
I think it depends on the product category and the cycle. So either as a product manufacturer or as a product producer, it's different. So taking it like from the producer perspective, I think you can drive growth by being different and standing out, kind of talking about what you're doing, sustainability. But typically those things are also saving you money, which then can pour back into growth, which is really great. From a product side, I think it's a little harder because the cool thing about what's going on today is this summit is it's now a much bigger part of the conversation. When we started Allmade 10 years ago, when Stanley Stella started, 14 years ago, it was like, you're new, and new is easy to differentiate yourself, and that can drive growth. But now so many people are using recycled products or saving water per shirt or whatever it might be, that now it's not as different anymore. So you have to find different ways to drive growth because it's now a mainstream, which is awesome, which is what we really wanted, and it's really cool to see. But how are you making your products still trendy, still cool, still affordable, and then tying that with traditional marketing strategies that any business needs to grow?
Excellent insights. Great to think about it that way. What about you, Will? Anything there from shifting from the nice to have to the real growth drivers in your business?
Yeah, and thank you for having me. I think for us, the big thing was when when we made it an explicit part of our business strategy. When, it's always been part of our DNA in terms of sustainable and, and wanting to kind of do things in the right way. But when we called it out in our business strategy, when we said, all right, we're going after this SGP certification, when we started telling our employees, just like Kate just said, that internal side, when we started telling our employees, we're doing this, we're now going, we've gotten certified, then it became real because now the employees are saying, well, how is this? Are we doing these things? Are we filling out those requirements that we said we're doing. Then you go out and then now we're telling people about it, that external sharing that message. And so for us, really it became when we just kind of began to really kind of define it, label it, build it into our why of this creating better. Then it became a natural part of our conversation. Then it was something that we could talk about in a way that was part of who we were versus just this little add-on that we're taking, from this place to check a box.
Perfect answer, and a little love and a little shout out for the SGP certification. I know that wasn't easy, and I know that's a big deal. Julie, what about to you? Nice to have, yeah, but now we're in this real kind of growth movement. What are some of those drivers? Is there something there that's influencing your decisions or Stanley Stella's?
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to what others are saying. So basically, when you start making it be when it stops being a side message, right, and it really becomes the item that's shaping your product decisions, I think that's when it becomes a real growth driver, right? So sustainability isn't just kind of like the side part; it really is part of your ethos and your values. Okay. So when it's fully embedded into your offering, it reinforces the design and the performance. So not just using responsibility as a standalone selling point. Also, I like to think about other brands out there, other organizations and businesses that are outside of our industry. I know myself, like I make a lot of purchasing decisions on my own based on sustainable practices, and I have for a long time. So when I think about the brands that I buy into, maybe it's mattresses or sheets or something like that. Usually these organizations, the sustainability is not their main driving point. It's just part of who they are. Then they have other attributes about their brand that really set them apart, right? So when you're just going out there and you're just hanging your hat on sustainability, sometimes it's just, I think that's when the consumer starts getting triggered and thinking, oh, this is a greenwashing thing, right? But when it's part
Gotcha.
of your DNA and it's who you are, and then you have all these other aspects around it, that's where we really see a big difference.
Great insights, everybody. Yeah, I love that. All right, quick question back to, let's go to Kate. Kate first, and others, you can build on this if you want. But Kate, spend some time with me here. Can you give us a specific example when sustainability really did directly help win business or help you like open up a new account or unveil some new opportunity? Can you share something like
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. And this actually happens all the time. I completely agree with what Julie was saying, right? Once it's baked into your DNA, you're not necessarily going out and selling on that main point. But what you're doing is you're demonstrating to your client and to the market that part of what you're bringing is a value-centered proposition, right? So you are an organization that believes in something from the beginning to the end, even when no one is looking, right? We're doing the right thing, even when it's not something that someone asks for. And I think those things are pleasant surprises and value adds, right? So when we're talking about how we measure up against advertising agency environments, our advertising agencies are looking at value adds that bring them to the table to define exactly what they're doing, that helps their client feel as though they are not just buying one piece of advertising, but they are actually creating a method inside their organization, right? They're going to market with something that is standing out against their competitors, but also saying like, we're just fundamentally making the entire value cycle better. So for us, a couple years ago, we had a presentation for a large enterprise client. The team came in and pitched it to me. I had been involved with the enterprise client onboarding, and we were in the RFP stage. We got all the way to kind of like the last stage. We were looking at kind of doing the product sourcing for that. And one of the things that came up when the team brought it to me is that they had this beautiful aesthetic design, a number of products in there that looked really gorgeous, very retail inspired, loved it. However, I knew from the enterprise client and doing a deep dive on the client's values that they are deeply committed to an authentic, nature-based experience in their merchandise. That's how they go to market with their end users. That's how they talk about it with their employees, that they want their organization, and we're talking a huge global brand, to be reflective of what's positive in the environment. And so I asked the team to please scrap the ideas and go back to look at what we could do in that space by exchanging those pieces out for a product mix that was going to give the client back a discussion around their own values and impact, and why that carried beyond the merchandise solution, beyond the e-commerce store that we were giving them, but all the way back into the values and the ethics, and so that they could even continue that conversation after those items are in the employees and the end users' hands. And for sure, the number one thing they called out when we got to the table, and people kind of were like a little nervous at first, right? Is this going to sell, or are you selling me on just the eco stuff? Obviously, I'm known for the soapbox. When they got to the table, the number one thing the client called out is, you are getting this exactly because you understood how our values stand out and what it means to speak beyond the advertising campaign into the ethics of who we are as an organization. And it won us the bid.
Love that. Great story. And I was going to follow up, but I don't think I need to, about, are you sure you didn't win the deal because of your massive personality and your team's abilities to be nimble and all those things? Was it really what got you across the finish line? But I think it's so cool that you've already answered that question. So awesome. Anybody else want to jump in here? Will, have you got anything there that, sustainability directly help you win business or grow an account?
In a very similar way, yes. I mean, we at one point were working with what I'll call an unnamed sustainability network. So end user looking for one of their events and working with them. And what it did for us was it opened the door, right? We're certified. I mean, in the previous session talking about certifications, hey, this is third party. We're certified. We meet these criteria, and so what it allowed was it allowed the conversation. It allowed the conversation to begin. But and maybe Kate would describe the same way. It's not a magic. I think we all know it's not a magic bullet. Can't be, right? Because they were still price conscious. Still, they want these things, and you still have to explain it in a way. But someone mentioned between the buyer and the end user, they still had to pass those products to their final users. Therefore, they still have budgetary constraints, and so they didn't take the top of the top. In a good, better, best situation really helped us in that situation. But it's there. It helps to open the door. But again, it's not the magic bullet. It's just part of the conversation.
Keeps the conversation flowing, or might open up a door that otherwise wouldn't have been. Love that.
The door was opened for us because of that. Again, sustainability, right? Sustainability director, right? Was there. We it was a good match, but still, it was that and.
So quick to you, Ryan. Yeah. Any quick insights there?
I love what both those comments were. I think the ability to match your product offering with, like what Kate was saying, understanding their values, the goals of the client, what their initiatives are. Sometimes that's carbon, sometimes that is water saving, sometimes that's recycling, sometimes that's using organic or not the use of chemicals. And then it becomes this standard. I get the opportunity to see a lot of really awesome print shops. I was one in Utah that does a lot of band merch. He's like, yeah, I had Allmade on the press the other day. He's like, oh, who was using Allmade? He's like, oh yeah, Sleeping with Sirens just wanted a organic cotton shirt, so we went with you guys. And it's like, there's not a whole lot of organic cotton shirts on the market, 100% organic cotton shirts. And then I was at a shop yesterday with my favorite ski resort out here in the Northwest called Crystal Mountain. He's like, I just printed these hoodies for Crystal Mountain. They just spec'd this, and so it becomes a part of the standard. But the ability to offer something that really matches that client's request is important. So understanding through your supply chain where your different vendors hit those different key values or sustainability goals of your clients.
Love that. That's good insight. Thank you for sharing those examples. Julie, do you want to have anything there? Is there something that comes up that you can lean on? I know distributors and decorators are leaning on you in a way to kind of guide them to this process.
Yeah, no, that's definitely something that we've seen. We have had a couple of music merch opportunities where they specifically came to us simply because it was an organic cotton tee. And we are seeing that specific market segment demand that more often. I would say that the organic cotton aspect is probably the highest interest, aside from farming practices and social aspects and the carbon emissions, right? It's really about the organic cotton at the moment. But yeah, definitely we're seeing that, and there are instances where we are working with certain organizations where they specifically need us to align with either GOTS or GRS or, better work program, something like that. So, really having these certifications allows us to really get our foot in the door with certain opportunities where before, like, you wouldn't even be considered.
So quick follow up to that. Would that you getting in the door, if I'm an apparel decorator, then that helps me get in that same door because of your certifications?
I mean,
Did I get
absolutely,
that right?
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we're working with several decorators where they're now
Okay.
being able to, promote our product to their customers. And it gives them a new, fresh item, a new take, something to put out there that's different, unique, and meets their requirements. So definitely opening the doors for them as well.
Perfect. All right, so Ryan, let me get to you. I want to start with Ryan, and then maybe some others will build on this. But buyers are actually responding to this right now, right? It's hot. It's a topic that's got legs. Whether it's the certification, whether it's the storytelling, is there something else that maybe is helping move these conversations forward?
I've seen this a couple times already today in the talks and discussions, is really understanding and showing the impact of what a decision or a purchase makes is important. Whether that's the carbon savings or the water savings. I heard, was it every shirt saves like 800 gallons of water or something like that, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So really displaying that easily, and there's great tools, a lot of like just supply chain research tools that will collaborate all this data, match it with your certifications, and then give it on a per purchase basis. We use a product called Green Story at Allmade, and there's other ones out there as well. So having that ability at your buyer's fingertips to really understand the impact of that decision is key.
Love that. So, Kate, anybody else jump in here?
Yeah, I have
Buyers
big
actually
feelings.
respond. Yeah, go.
Yeah. So of course I have to be like the risk mitigation queen, which is total buzzkill. But like really what your clients are responding to, two things that I see: risk, right? Do you want to have a product that you sourced that then someone picks up and goes on social with and says whatever because it wasn't sustainably sourced or the story behind it is terrible?
Or
Right?
it
Did you
didn't
just put your
connect. That's a
brand
lie.
Interesting.
right? Do you want a greenwashing piece? Do you want anything like that? You don't want that, right? And as a distributor, my job is here to be your agent of success. I'm supposed to make sure that we are looking out for all the things that you didn't think of. So they're responding to risk. If you have a risk discussion, that's one. Number two, they're responding to budget constraints. So if I tell you that I can take your marketing budget as it pertains to a merchandise campaign and not only get you the merch that you want, but create a story that continues to sell for your mission, right? Now I've taken your budget and I have made it that much more complex, right? You've told this an incredible story about your value add. You've told something about your ethics. You've told your intentionality through that same budget dollar without having to add a separate line item, right? You don't have to go somewhere else and create a marketing campaign in digital or in print if you just told it with the merchandise, right? So if I'm talking to our clients, those two pieces, why would we not evaluate risk and budget constraints to maximize our output and to make sure that wherever we're putting it in anyone's hands, right, especially as it comes to that merchandise, that they're wearing it with pride, but it continues to talk about what's most meaningful, whether it's sustainable development goals based on the United Nations or the growth and strategy of a particular organization over time in responding to what the market needs are from an ethical standpoint.
Insights, deep insights. I knew you guys would be bringing the goods. Love it. All right, I want to transition because we're on the clock, obviously. Will, this is to you first. I want to shift us away from what I call boardroom or ballroom sustainability. And I want to get back to shop floor sustainability in the trenches, right? The reality. Like, all of the discussions have been great. I'm not picking on anybody, but does sustainability ever create, maybe, let's take the opposite side. Does it create a friction for you? Is there any costs or complexities? Is there skepticism that sometimes shows up as the big boogeyman? And how are you handling that in the real world, in the shop floor sustainability mode?
That's a great question. Look at it from two different ways. Does it cause friction? I mean, the truthful answer is yes, sure, sometimes it does. I think in the day-to-day, oftentimes we would see it in this. We would see it in the skepticism that sometimes comes along from customers. they're expecting a higher cost. You just say a word, right? You lead with the wrong. They're expecting a higher cost. They're expecting limited options. It's funny that we talked about organic. I mean, thinking back to organic t-shirts, 10, 15 years ago, right? There was your color was one of 5 colors, and you had like this many styles, and maybe a little bit longer than that ago. But that was a limited option. And so, yeah, that friction can show up. And so I think the way that we have been really treating it, or grown to treat it, is by really making it not so much like an add-on additional type benefit, but really kind of baking it into the entire package. Like talking about, part of the DNA, right? Back to that. It's what I like to call a both and. We need to talk about the service. We need to talk about the quality, the print quality. I mean, I'm a t-shirt printer, right? Got to talk about the print. Got to talk about meeting your deadline, and obviously there's going to be budget. And but I like to think of it as but wait, there's more, and that we also are offering you this benefit along the way. So dealing with it in that way, in recognizing that they don't want a premium. Oftentimes, they don't want a service fee on top, which is like the sustainability fee, right? They don't want that. But if we could use it as a differentiator, if we can use it to explain, to tell our story, kind of build that relationship, then that kind of helps both parties see if we're a good fit, right? Because we care about it. I mean, we've taken on internal costs in terms of the fees of certification, the different ways that we do some of our internal, the screen printing, the reclaim, all that kind of like nuts and bolts type stuff. Like, we've accepted that. That's part of doing business with us. But it's stuff that we own ourselves, and we're not trying to pass that on. But again, it's the relationship. It's that story of like, hey, this is who we are. Yep. So.
No, that's great. I love it. And it's baked in. It's who you are. I was just going to say that. So obviously we're on the clock. I have one last question. I want to target this toward Julie first. Julie, let's talk about the Stanley Stella proposition. You guys have clearly made this part of your higher standard, to use your words. And I love the fact that you're using it in a way that it's not a limitation. So what does that look like for you? What does that look like for Stanley Stella and in real life and practice?
Yeah, so, at Stanley Stella, we really are trying to stand for something deeper, for the planet, for the people, but at the same time, never compromising on the quality. So these are core values of ours, right? And so this mindset is prioritized with every process we establish or any venture that we pursue. And it's been that way since the very first day. So like when we're developing a new product, we're asking questions like, how do we engineer this product so that it will last? How can we achieve the lowest defect rate when printing to avoid wastage? How can we do this dye process with the least impact to the environment, right? So when you're putting all of this thought and you're making these choices based on these types of high metrics, you really end up with a high quality product that decorates beautifully, and it also exceeds sustainability expectations, right? So our partners are seeing success by being able to offer, these high value products to their customers.
Awesome answer. I wish we could go on. We have so much more to talk about, but we're at that time, and Eric's already been knocking on my door. So I just want to thank you all so much, because I know for a fact, because I know all 4 of you, that you are treating sustainability as a competitive advantage and not treating it as some kind of a compromise. So thank you so much for being here today. Eric, no more need to knock on my door. I get it, we're on the time. But thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Julie, Kate, Will. You guys have been fabulous. And thank you for showing up today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so
Good
much.
job, everyone.